Okay, so it's the Primus time to talk about The Ties That Bind, written by my bro Clayton Milstead. Now, I was fortunate enough to be one of the beta readers for this book, so when he first finished the rough drafts of it, I believe I had a pretty good idea of what I want to say in regards to it. So, let's start with this premise. It is set in post-apocalyptic America, taking place after an event that you will hear throughout the story called The Shift. Basically what the shift was, it was an event caused by the Hadron Colliders. If you're not familiar about what those are, the Hadron Collider is a particle accelerator on a massive scale located in Switzerland. It sits 100 meters underground in a tunnel that forms a large ring large enough to reach France. As its name suggests, it deals with particles, and what it does is take these particles and accelerates them to high speeds and smash them together. These smashing of particles, amongst other things, brought about the real fear of a black hole being created that could be a very bad problem for everyone on Earth. In The Ties That Bind, that fear is realized when a wormhole, a hole that allows for travel through time and space, opens up and creatures from different time periods pour through them. This wormhole is called a tear, and I think of them as similar to the tears that was seen in the show Primeval. Okay, so the story picks up and is centralized 30 years after the said event following 3 youths. The best way I can describe it without spoiling the plot is to say it's about a brother traveling with his sister and cousin to save the ones closest to them. However, they learn that the world is not only bigger than they thought, but is more deadly than they could have ever imagined, and I'm not referring to just the dinosaurs. Speaking of dinosaurs, there is one that caught my eye and I want to talk about, and I know what you're thinking. Is it talking about this one dinosaur, a spoiler? And I would like to say, not at all. Now, the story does have animalistic elements to them in the form of the wildlife the characters encounter, but one creature in particular stood out to me, and that was a dinosaur by the name of Scar. I mean, a dinosaur that has the same name as one of my favorite Disney villains. You can't miss, right? So, Scar is a Utahraptor with a ghastly appearance. A ghost white face with feathers as black as the night he stalks in. The reason Scar is my favorite is because he steals any scene that he appears in, instantly making himself the center of attention, which is interesting because while there are prehistoric beasts in this story, they are not the focal point. The purpose is to be just what they are, living animals trying to survive and make the most out of the situation they've been put in, just like the humans of the shift are trying to do as well. So, the fact that Scar can maintain this while also being an interesting character on the back of my mind of wondering where he is, where he's lurking, knowing that this chapter may be his chance to strike, kept me on edge, more so than the human characters, and not because he's a dinosaur. And just because the fact that I love dinosaurs. No, that's not my reason. You see, Scar is based off a real life event that took place a few decades back, if I can recall correctly. Let me ask you, have you ever heard the tragedy of Vladimir Markov the Poacher? I thought not. It's not a story many are willing to share with you. Luckily, I love this story, and here's the quick version. Markov, as stated, was a poacher who stumbled upon a tiger in his kill. He shot the tiger and took either its kill or some of it for food or something like that for himself. Now, the tiger didn't appreciate that. Now, what could only be described as premeditated murder and infuriation for the disrespect it felt that the poacher had put upon it, it stalked Markov for hours. It destroyed his things, letting him know that he was indeed his target, causing the man to be shunned by his friends and other people in the village that he stayed in for fear of incurring the tiger's wrath on them as well. Leaving Markov to one day just come home when the tiger had been sitting in his house and waiting for him for hours, in which the tiger succeeded in killing him. This real-life event will serve as the inspiration for Scar, and for me, I love this type of characterization because not only does it bring life to Scar beyond being just another dinosaur, it shows that animals exhibit and exude the very same emotions we do, and that it's wrong of us to believe that an animal cannot take on a protagonistic or antagonistic role. Now, I will say this, that Scar is actually taller than your average Utahraptor. He does come in at around 10 feet, 4 feet taller than your average Utahraptor, which is 2 meters or 6 feet, somewhere around there. My reasoning for mentioning this is because when I first started talking about this book in my community post, I did mention that there would be paleo accuracy. And everybody knows that a Utahraptor isn't 10 feet tall, but my reasoning behind this is it probably has something to do with the tear, but it doesn't detract away from what Scar brings to the book. He still manages to drive the story forward and doesn't detract from anything in what he does. His behaviors, his reactions, his actions are all natural. I could go on about Scar for the rest of this video, but that wouldn't do the review justice because the book is more than just this one awesome dinosaur. Speaking of the animals, they feel natural, real, and tangible in the settings they are depicted in. You would think in a world where all manner of beasts are coexisting, they would feel out of place, and they don't. There were some encounters that stuck with me, like the Carnotaurus and Titanoboa, or one of the more peaceful scenes where one of the characters is singing and she harmonizes with a pair of Lambeosaurus. Now, I can't remember if it's in the book, but I know Clay did tell me that not all the animals were able to adapt and some did slip back into extinction. I also don't want to make it seem like every prehistoric animal that has ever existed made it through during the shift. That is not the case, and I also want to get across that while the animals are portrayed as accurately as possible for those of you that like feathered dinosaurs, you got something going there for you. There is even a feathered T-Rex as well, even though that's not exactly accurate.
Isn't that cute? But it's wrong!
But that's neither here nor there. My point is that while these creatures are depicted as accurately as possible, their locations are not, and that's because the tears from the shift aren't fixed points. So just because a tear opens up in Montana doesn't mean a T-Rex will come through. You can get a Toxodon or a Giga. My understanding of them is that the tears were just doors that opened up in a random point in prehistory for an unknown amount of time before closing and leading the world into the state that it's in now. Another thing I like was the handling of the post-apocalyptic settings. You have your raiders and you have your settlements ranging from small towns to cities, people rebuilding amongst the ruins of their former world. Describing why the world is in ruins is spoiler territory, so you're going to have to start reading if you want to find out. I feel like the story did a good job of handling and depicting something that was talked about in the story called the Shift War. Once again, talking about the Shift War would be spoiler territory. So all I'm going to say is, the world after the shift is yes a different place, a whole new frontier for those who were born after the events of the shift and the world that followed it. There are mentions of diseases that the prehistoric animals brought back with them, some that could be cured and some that couldn't, some that led to some tragic scenes the characters stumbled upon too, showing the severity of the situation during its early years. The world fell to ruin because mankind and the creatures of the past were all top of the food chain, and in their respective points of history, and that the world cannot function with multiple apex beings at the top. And so there was a systematic collapse in the natural hierarchy. Money is a thing of the past with the American government, long since gone, and not everyone was able to fully adjust. People died whether from raiders, dinosaur attacks, or inability to function in this new world. There is a scene with a young girl that I will not spoil, but had me wondering if she would be okay long after the group moved on from their interaction with her. Despite the setbacks, I didn't feel overall gloom for the world and the people in it because Clay showed in this book the resourcefulness of the human population. I will be honest and say there were a few characters I didn't immediately take any interest in at first, but did become mildly interesting to me as the story progressed forward. And one character I resonated with a lot because as an older brother to two younger sisters myself, his sentiment stuck with me. There was one character that I didn't take interest in really at all, as I felt at a certain point in the story said character had nothing more to offer. However, that was just me, and I'm sure your thoughts towards certain characters will be different than my own. For example, the character I didn't take interest in, another of the beta readers did, so maybe they saw something I overlooked or was able to resonate with her, like I was able to resonate with one of the characters in the book myself. Speaking of which, and Clay, you know what you did, at a certain point in the book that you feel the need to get your pitchforks and torches, I need you to come back to this video and we'll congregate the time and place to harass Clay. And before you say anything, Clay, I will once again reiterate, you know what you did. I will say this though, that if you like a story that has suspense and action, as well as dinosaurs, I do recommend this to you all. It was honestly an enjoyable read for me, as I was interested in knowing what was going to happen next. What the next hurdle was going to be for the characters, as well as what animals they were going to encounter along the way. The book is $21 on Amazon for paperback, and I want you guys to pick it up. So as a show of good faith, the first person that comments, #Clay, you know what you did, will get a copy purchased by me and sent to you. Also, between you and me, there's a sequel in the works, so you might want to get reading if you haven't already. The link will be down in the description. Have a nice day, everyone, and I'll see you guys in the next video.